The likelihood of you getting married to someone outside of your race is just as likely as you voting for someone outside of your political party. That's according to new research by Pew Research, and they found that Americans say they are overwhelmingly married to people with whom they agree politically. In fact, just 9% of Republicans and 8% of Democrats say their spouse or partner is a member of the other major political party. I am definitely part of that, percentage. No, not that small percentage. The vast majority of people who don't want to marry outside of their political party, for various reasons, right? It's your core value. At least for me, it's part of my identity, and I can't stand Republicans, so I couldn't do it. Now, Pew estimated in 2015 that 6.3% of Americans in 2013 were married to a spouse of a different race. Now, the number has increased a little since then. Every year it gets a little higher because people, I guess, become a little more open-minded to marrying outside of their race. But as you can see, the numbers are similar. So whether you marry someone outside your political party or you marry someone outside of your race, the statistics are usually the same.
So the most likely thing that's going to happen is that you marry within your own culture. Now, what I mean by that is different than what most people would perceive it as. So part of your culture is, yes, your ethnic background, but that's not the only part. Also, your political beliefs, your personal, ideological beliefs, that's also part of your culture. And now in America, we have a lot of the races mixing, which we think is wonderful. Some others don't, obviously. But to them, there is no difference between white culture, black culture, Latino culture, Asian culture, because they all grew up together. I mean, easy example is me. I grew up in central Jersey where all those races mixed, and we all grew up, in the town I grew up, there was a lot of immigrants. So it was an immigrant and a lot of Jews too. So immigrant and Jewish culture, just secular, what I would consider wonderful culture. And so to me, that was my cultural group. Not the Turkish, right? So people say, oh, marry Turkish. But when I started the Turkish Student Association at University of Pennsylvania, and then I realized that I don't share anything in common with anybody else in the group.
That always cracks me up. I can't imagine that.
Yeah, no, you know why? Because I was a dork, and I thought, oh, I've got to get this on my resume. I'm going to start a whole new group, and I'm going to be the president of that group.
You were a dork.
Yes, that's right. Now I'm very cool.
You're very cool.
And so, and then we started, and everybody in the group was lovely. But they were just from a different culture. They just sat around and drank tea and talked about Turkish politics. I was like, I don't know much about Turkish politics. Can we talk about football? They're like, oh, yes. Did you see the goal that Ahmed scored the other day? I was like, oh, yeah. Okay. So that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I wasn't in that culture. I grew up in a different culture. So what did I do? I dated Argentinian girl, an Indian girl, Korean, Jewish, Chinese, Venezuelan, Jamaican, and finally married a Chinese girl. Why? You say, oh, they're all disparate. No, they're not. They're all in the same cultural group I grew up in.
Right. So it really depends on your community. It's interesting, though, because, a lot of, so obviously I'm Armenian, and Los Angeles is a very culturally diverse place. You have people from all over the world living in Los Angeles. But Armenians are kind of incredible, even though they may not have been born in, like in your case, Turkey, and you didn't even immigrate to the United States until you were 8 years old, right? They were born in Los Angeles and grew up in Los Angeles. They're still very much like about their culture and their culture only. So I think that your personal preferences obviously play a huge role in it as well, regardless of what your environment is.
And look, that's my bias too. I love mixing. So when groups become more insular, and this happens to a lot of groups, if not all groups, like you'll go to the cafeteria and there'll be this group there and that group there, and that drives me crazy. And I'm like, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's sit together. Let's mix this thing up. But that's my bias because I grew up that way.
Yeah.
And so, but now back to the Republicans and Democrats in this story. In the old days, when I was growing up, it's not like Grandpa Cenk here telling stories. In the old days, I used to walk to school in the snow with no boots on. Anyway, so there was such thing as liberal Republicans. I was a liberal Republican. And there were moderate Republicans. But that's all been eviscerated now. So now we're much more clearly in camps. The Republicans are super conservative. The Democrats are progressive to moderate. Okay, there's barely. I have Republican friends, but largely they're Republican because they want lower taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, there's many other things, but it boils down to lower taxes for 80 to 90% of the reason that they're Republicans. And I can live with that. I don't agree, but I can live with that.
Yeah.
But if you're from a Republican because you love wars and you think torture kicks ass, and you know we're too soft on the minorities in America,
Yeah.
you're not in my cultural group. Of course, I wouldn't marry you.
Yeah.
And they would think likewise. So that's what this study's telling you. But again, from my point of view, it's a wonderful thing that we're now developing into a society where race is not the relevant part.
Right.
Where you can say, hey, we might be different races, but we're all from the same American culture. Or
That
at
was
least,
beautiful, Cenk.
thank you. Except for the fact that it's American Republican culture or American Democratic culture, and those are still pretty disparate.
Yes.